Pink Cloud Radio 83. So it's not so easy, is it? Not really to get on the hard side of things, because I notice that sometimes I do. I notice that it's hard to talk about it this way. Because sometimes it comes off as negative, doesn't it? It comes off as grim. It's a very easy thing to do with a lot of stuff that we talk about. I'm talking with everything. Because I think a lot of times we flutter around this positive energy that may not be so positive. That we believe is positive. That being as this Death King, we kind of don't look at certain things and reconcile it. We kind of say that those things are bad no matter what. When it's nothing at all. Not good or bad. Not anything. That's what creates a lot of perpetuation of war and stuff. It's the same exact reason that we continue stuff, is because we don't want to understand it. We don't want to look at it a little differently than what people perpetuation has done. Like Jax questioned me of. If he doesn't understand your silence, then he probably won't understand your words. Agree or disagree? No. I'm not going to agree or disagree. I think it's... Sorry if I have to say this, but this doesn't sound cliche at all. This actually sounds like a ramification of not believing a cliche. It's almost like, because you didn't believe in this cliche, believe this one. It's like a creation off of creation, meaning that we already had an idea of how to believe things, but this one took over. Meaning that you being silent, which I totally understand at a certain point, with what I've seen and what I've heard, with what I've said, I've learned that to do something justice, especially with a woman, is to be silent. It's our silence that counts, not theirs. And to be fair, that's why this statement doesn't make any fucking sense. Because my silence when I'm with somebody is to comfort them. I can't be a doctor. I can't be a teacher. I can be there. That's about it. But it doesn't mean that it's not important. In fact, that's probably the most important thing, to be there without trying to make somebody graduate or make somebody better. They have to do that. And I think this statement tries to classify that somebody has to make you better. Saying that, if you want, if he doesn't understand your silence, well, is that the whole point of things? Did you go knowing somebody because you wanted them to understand your silence? If that was the only reason, well, you probably don't even have to say this statement. You probably don't even have to think about this to make your choice to not be with somebody or to not be around somebody. Well, they don't understand my silence. If you're that closed off about things, then you don't want to teach anybody the kind of person you are. And I think that's the most that I've learned about things, is that what creates a lot of perpetuation and perpetuation of cycles, continuous cycles of violence or abusive relationships or something as such. It could be close, it could be far. But it's still an abusive relationship that affects everything and everyone. But that's the whole point of it. If it's about understanding, what do you expect? What do you expect of that understanding? I think understanding is a killer point of just a word. But it means a lot more. And it means different things to everyone. So if you want somebody to understand your silence and they want to understand your words, maybe it's because you didn't say any words. If all you're giving people is silence, you're not even giving them an opportunity to understand what your words mean. You're just saying, well, I'm going to keep silent. Sounds familiar. I don't know if I agree with it in that way, because I believe that you have to speak. No matter what. You can't visualize what somebody is based on what you experienced before for somebody else. It could be somebody very close to you. It could be your family members. It could be your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother. Anybody. But if you try to inflict that kind of damage on somebody else and say, well, you wouldn't understand either because you're doing the exact same thing. But they're not. If they were doing the exact same thing, you couldn't even hang out with them. You'd say, I would rather be home. You're giving them something else. And you're washing it off clean and saying no thanks. In a lot of ways that kind of makes it seem like nobody's worth an opportunity to learn. Nobody's worth an opportunity to stay there, to try even. No way. It's a no way answer. And I think it's a no way street, If you're waiting, it's like the old saying, if you're waiting for freedom to come to you or to be an individual, you're on a train to nowhere because you have to do it yourself, and it doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make it any harder or easier to deal with people. It doesn't. You have to make it harder or easier. If you're going to make it harder, well, you're going to believe that, somebody's understanding of your silence is going to mean everything. It can. But if it truly means everything, then you gotta learn. You gotta teach too. It's not just about being in silence. It's also being in spoken terms. Because to me, it's not about winning or losing. It's not about failure or success. It's about what you're doing with it. What you're doing with that failure or success. Why you're doing it at all. How you're getting along with it. If you're just saying, well, I don't need to do anything here, and you're still staying there, let's see. Who's the one that's not doing the right thing? When people tell you, you should know better, it's you who should know better. Because if you're spending the time to tell somebody else they should know better, it means you're not. It means you're not knowing better. And you're just telling somebody else, hey, you don't understand my silence. Well, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. But I didn't know that I was meant to understand silence. There's been so much silence in the world, I still don't understand it. And I'm not going to. I have no reason to, because I think everybody's an individual by it. And if they stand by their individuality, they get a lot more out of it. But most people don't. Most people think that if you get more people behind you, because we believe in these physical forms, this material substance so much, that if we have it, we can garner it and use its behavior for whatever we need. But it has to come together. No, it doesn't. We only have to come together if we can. If we can't, we're not supposed to. The conversation doesn't start, with everybody. And I know that because I haven't started a conversation with everybody in this world. Look at me. I'm talking to myself in my own room, guys. Pink Cloud Radio style. This Death King. Do you really think I could have a conversation with everybody? No. Do you think I have a conversation with myself consistently? Yes. Do you think it means that less people are going to understand it? Yes. You're damn right less people are going to understand it. But it's because they don't want to anymore. They choose not to. Just as much as they want their side to be won, they're telling me that you're going to lose. Well, I don't want to be around somebody who's telling me I'm going to lose. You don't have to say it. You're showing it by what you're saying about what you don't understand I'm saying. You're telling me by saying, I'm tired, let's stop here. You're telling me by saying that, oh, well, if you think that way, you're crazy, Fuck you, There you go. Well, that's your answer. That's always going to be your answer. If I wanted that kind of behavior, well, then I'd ask for somebody who's a teenager, is full of angst, is full of rebellion, I'd ask for that all the time. But I'm kind of that person who's like a kid, but I'm actually like a kid, which means that I have an open mind, child eyes about things. I don't just, want everything and have the material substance everywhere and get everything I want from everybody. That's, in my life in that way. So, what do I think about if you don't understand? If he doesn't understand your silence, then he probably won't understand your words. I don't believe that's true. I think one doesn't go with the other. Silence and words are not the same thing. No matter how much we try to say they are. Before words were invented, before speech and the way we have done things for a long time, we understood each other based on grunts, based on what we could show. What we could show interaction with in most ways. Interacting with people is not always being silent. A lot of people say, well, that's body language. No. Body language is not inherent value in everybody. Not everybody was taught, when they were young, well, there's body language and, no, I don't remember that conversation. Only body language conversation I know is pornography and such. That's a body language I can see all the time. Cleavage everywhere. That's a body language I could see all the time. It doesn't mean that I think all women who do that show it off or something like that, or have something very, it doesn't mean that they're all trying to get it. Sometimes people just like dressing like that. And I personally don't have a problem with it. I've heard people within my close family range not liking it. But it truly doesn't bother me. Not because I'm desensitized to it, mostly because I think some people have something that they want to carry. And sometimes it's what you have on your body, whether it be a tattoo, whether it be your boobs, if you're a woman, for example, or anything else. If you're a guy with how you work out or something. It's something. And sometimes people hang into that balance, meaning that it's just a body part, just a way of, the kind of, the kind of oomph you could push on people right there when they see you. I don't need that. I think my showing is mostly what I do every week on here. Something hard to look at because it's something that's consistent. I have no reason to value it as much as I should, but it's because I don't need to. It's not really something that I need to look at every single second and say, well, this is worth everybody's time. It's not. Maybe it's worth nobody's time. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I think that's one thing I've learned about a lot of this. That's where we come from. Suppose you're in love and somebody's mistreating you. You don't say, hey, you can't hurt me this way, I care. You just let all the different bodies fall where they may. And they always do. May after a few months. But that's not why you fell in love in the first place, just to hang on to life. So you have to take your chances and try to avoid being logical. Pain always produces logic, which is very bad for you. When I saw that quote, little combusted by it, because I think there's certain things I can be attracted to in it, and there's certain things that don't make sense to me. There's a distraction in it. There's something that kind of makes the love less valuable. Especially if you're using something like, when you use something like different bodies. I don't really have the feelings for somebody or care because of somebody's body. We're all living things. There is something that we have to look at in some form or another. But there's something else too. It's not about me caring. The logical thing to do. There is no logical thing to do. There is something you can correspond to though. What your feelings mean. So when I looked at this, I thought, suppose you're in love and somebody's mistreating you. You can actually say this. You don't say, but you can say that to somebody who's mistreating you. Hey, you can't do this. You can't hurt me this way. I care. You can say it. It doesn't mean it's going to change what's happening to you. But it does mean that you're showing something that the other person is not. That's it. So you should say that. You don't say, well, why not? Why don't you say that when somebody's hurting you? What else do you say? Please more? I'm a glutton for punishment here? To me, the most invaluable thing that you have to do, meaning that it doesn't need to be valued. It should be something that's an instinct, that's a sense, that's something that's just built in the guts to just say, I care. I can't, if you're going to mistreat me like this, I can't be here. I care about you. And this is what you do to me. So I don't think you don't, if it's just a body, you can't allow what may happen to happen if it's leading to that. Because it already is happening. If you let everything fall where it may, after a few months, but that's not why you fell in love in the first place. Yeah, it isn't. You're right. I do agree with that. There is no purposeful reaction that you're waiting for when you fall in love. There isn't. So that statement right there I agree with. If you're waiting for something to happen because you love this person, well, you're on a train to nowhere, as I said before. And you truly are. Because what you're doing with yourself is basing what you feel, your emotions, your sensitivities, on what the other person will do. Well, okay, first off, you should never do that because why don't you want to experience them? It's like when somebody says that, if they don't treat me well, or if somebody even says like, all men are assholes, or something like that. They're not looking at you as you. They're looking at you as them. They're looking at you as what they think of them and everything that, inhibits and uses the contradictions of what they've experienced before. It only leads back to that. So, of course, to me, that's not logical. You don't have to avoid being logical. You have to avoid using love as just the first place. It's not a competition. And if it is a competition, it's not worth it. Because to me, the one thing that shows that you haven't grown as a human with feelings, emotions, sensitivities, is if you always base things off of competition. That's what it says here. But that's not why you fell in love in the first place. Well, it shouldn't be a first place. You already know why you fell in love. Experience it. Evolve with it. Create it. Love it. Use it. Don't wait for somebody else to. And it's not about like who you even fell in love with. You don't need to hang on to life. It's already there. Just to hang on to life. Well, you don't need to just hang on to life. You are living. If you don't think you're living, maybe truly, I don't think you're in love. Because you'd be living. Me, I'm in love. Yes, I'm in love with somebody that I haven't seen for a while, and I can't name. And to be fair, it's going to be hard to, assemble something else after this. But it doesn't mean that I'm not trying. I am. I'm trying my hardest. But it's very difficult because of what I can bring and what I can't bring. It's not logical at all, but so you have to take your chances and try to avoid being logical. I don't think you really have to just take chances. If it matters, if somebody only gives you that chance, in that way, if they only give you a chance, they probably have something against a worthwhile life, to be with somebody that loves them. Like, I think sometimes when people say that, some people have to grow on you, I don't need mold. I don't need mold. I'm not looking to be somebody else's bread that they could mold on. Got enough bread that I have to eat. I kind of can't escape it, sadly. I'd love to eat other things, but a lot of times you can't. You don't have an opportunity. And try to avoid being logical. I don't know if it has to do with logic. I don't think either side has to do with logic. I think if you don't do something, it's not logical even. If you don't put yourself in these situations, it doesn't make you smarter. It doesn't make you logical or more reasonable. It doesn't actually. In fact, it makes you less reasonable because you will avoid almost everything then. I don't think you are logical if you avoid this. I don't think you're a smarter person, a smarter being, in that stance of molecular structure. All you are is a human. So, if you don't face a lot of things, it doesn't make you logical. Your experiences are dimmed down, and you don't really turn on that light anymore. Well, what's the point? The facts of life don't mean anything if all you're studying is just facts. If that's all you're doing, your research and everything, and you're not doing anything, what's the point? I respect a lot of the people that do protest and go out and actually do something. Because I know that most people won't step out of their houses. Everywhere in the world. It doesn't do with America only. That's why I said before that all this stuff about what's happening in the world right now, this being awake, has to do with what you're being treated as. Can you have time for what you truly love? Or are you being spit on every day? And everything can be taken away because you're giving everything right back to the people that you're working for. How can you ascend in life? How can you do anything with life if that's what you're doing with it? And we believe that God, if we take it from a spiritual, religious point of view, we would say that God will, prevail and He will show us the light and, make it so. He can't do it if we don't want to see it. He can't do it if we don't want to see light in ourselves. And I'm saying it in a religious point of view when I really don't see it as a religious person or an atheist. I see it as for what it is. If it is a spiritual location, it means that these people don't want it. Even though they're going to admittedly throw to the world that we believe in this God, this Christ, this Jesus, we believe in this, but they don't show it. None of them has shown it in decades, centuries, whatever you want to call it, since what happened, if it was done in that way. In fact, it doesn't need to have been done in that way. It could have been true, but maybe it was manipulated to show something else than what it was, which means that maybe we're worshiping the enemy. We're worshiping the same negative that we're trying to get away from. Well, you can't get away from a negative if you don't see it as a negative. You're helping the people that are hurting. At that point, if it's a human interaction. Religion is not a solvent that is spiritual. Though we can believe it is. We can say, well, it is spiritual because it's something that is a human bond. Just because we're bonding with it doesn't mean that it actually connects to us. It means we're connecting to it. Doesn't mean the it is actually helping us or coming to us, placing itself in us too. We have to do that ourselves. If we didn't have to do that ourselves, wouldn't it be money? There wouldn't be a system. There wouldn't need to be. Religion would actually show itself to be what it is and be truthful, and we don't even need a system to do it. We would just need our own common sense and the faculty of mind of what we have. That's why a lot of people say that, oh man, atheists and people without a religious view or anything, you don't know what kind of hurt they could do to other people. But that's the thing about it. We don't think we have the capability of doing something good with people if we don't have something else as a built structure around it. Well, if you can't, then you never could. I feel sad for you. If you have to have that around you, that security blanket, that security to do good. Real, true, good people that won't hurt people don't need that. They could see past the fabrication of lies of what you need to do to get something in the world. You don't need to get everything. All you need to get is yourself. Once you get yourself, you feel fulfilled. The last damage that somebody else can do would always make you say, no, don't do that. You may want something, but don't fucking do that to get it. You're the bad one here. They're not. What did they do? Personally, nothing. And that's our quartet of life now. We don't need to worry about that. Yes, there'll be an imbalance, but, we'll get better. We'll get better. We never do. So, to me, pain always produces logic, which is very bad for you. I don't think pain produces logic. I think pain produces pain. It's an emotion. If we need to use our brains to summarize or get to evaluate a evocative quality for it, then we haven't really used our feelings. To me, pain is not just logic, and it can't be sustained as logic. There's a lot more to it. If you don't express your emotions in some way, in some form, then you're damaging yourself at that point. And I think in a lot of ways that's what this whole thing is about. We're using a backhand to tell our story. Stop using a hand. Stop using a backhand. Start showing what you have inside. It may be hard to, because maybe you want something out of it. Well, if I show myself off, I want to make sure this does last. It does. No matter how much someone else gets away from you, that will last. In you, and most likely in them, even if we don't believe it does. Doesn't mean they have to come back to us just because they believe in us or they think of us. I'm probably thinking of a thousand things, and I'm pretty sure that someone else is too. Which is pretty crazy when you think about it, because it means that pain doesn't necessarily just produce logic. It produces what we have. It produces the experiences we have. It produces every single emotion, feeling, sensitivity that we make. And it doesn't just go away. We can try to. We can say the worst things, but it will never get rid of it. Never has to me. I'm glad I did the worst because, being secure, it does have its perks. Because once you learn to be secure, you don't really have to look at the rest of the world and feel like you're responsible for it. Because you're not. There isn't much to, cultivate our minds with, but there's a lot to try to understand, there are things to understand, but the thing to understand is what we go through first. The empathy we can create, and then that can come to more, It's just like not taking responsibility means the choice or place that started and left you in was never at all to begin with. It's a stab at myself here, like not taking responsibility means the choice or place that started, and was left you in, with what happened, for example, and, I don't like just bringing this up, but I have to. What happened with Christina and Catherine? What I was left in at the end was, very sarcastic, sarcastic irritation, and being left in that, something. It's not about logic. It's not about pain. The pain is there already. The pain already happened. The pain is consistent. What's different now? What's different now is that I'm not taking responsibility anymore. There's there's really a few things that responsibility can do. You can either take it from the start. I love taking responsibility from the start because once you do, you learn everything fast. You don't need to worry about a single thing because everything that happens is going to be based on what somebody else that doesn't take responsibility does. That's all you're going to pay attention to. It doesn't mean that you're consistently going to, drive it to them and say, hey, you should take responsibility, blah, blah, blah. No, most likely, for me, I was just quiet. You could treat me like shit, but it shows that I actually took responsibility, and I'll stay quiet. You could butcher me to the ground, and I'll still stay quiet because I want you to shut the fuck up and learn it. I can't say anything to tell you to shut up. You have to say everything, so then you'll shut the fuck up by yourself. You'll learn by yourself and say, God damn, Marcello, say something back. Come on, fight me, berate me, put me down. And if I don't, you find out what you're saying and what it actually does. Who you're saying it to and why the fuck you're saying it. And then you stop because you say, God damn, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing here. And I'm saying God damn in that way where most people use God. In that kind of say, oh no, oh God, I can't believe this is happening. I don't need to say that. I'm here. God isn't here. I'm the one here. Oh, Marcello, I can't believe this is happening. That's what I'll say. And I'll speak to myself because the Death King knows. That's inside me. I'm not afraid of love. I'm not afraid of death. Even death himself is afraid of me. If you want to use the images of God and the devil, they're even afraid of me. They're like, I'll step away from this guy. Jesus is like, whoa, well, I don't want to be crucified again. And Mary's like, oh man, I shouldn't have had sex that way. Here I am. But I'm kidding. But, it was never at all to begin with. Maybe it wasn't. But it is to me. See, it's a stab at myself, meaning that what I have to understand is not what somebody else did, what somebody else felt, what somebody else didn't feel. It wasn't about that. That's the one thing that most people try to drive into you, that it was just something that I felt at that time. I was just insecure at that time. And people try to explain away what they did. And to me, that's fine. But I think there's a true instinct to do that right away if you truly feel it. And I do have that from certain people. So I have continued friendships. I have a continuous thing that is a bond. Meaning that there isn't something that disconnects us. But there probably is still. Especially if it was taken so seriously that everybody else's will was put in a balance to it. And saying that you have to choose. The competition kind of bullshit that I hate. Not a fan of. Not in that kind of hate way, but just more that it doesn't signify what you truly feel. Say it, And I think that's what I've learned. It's not about being smart or logical. It's about knowing. What are you doing, by the way? But I don't have to ask that. I remember with what happened back then, it's a stab at myself here, but it's a stab at myself for what did happen. What happened between me and Christina, for example, when she was shouting at me in the car. I first did something and Catherine just said, be quiet, don't worry, And I thought about that. And I really did, because I saw exactly what it meant. What she was saying and what it meant. It meant something to her. So when I spoke up at all, it was a stab at myself. When you really think about it, when you speak up in a bad way, not even in a bad way, when you speak up at all when somebody else is speaking badly of you, let them. Let them finish it. Find out exactly what they feel. You'll hear it. You'll hear it all. Because once you hear all what they have to say, they're going to say everything. And sometimes you can see exactly that they always felt that way about you. I could point out every single ceaseless attempt between family members, between friends, between anybody, any human, blood or not. We're all blood here, so thank you very much for trying to define a line between who grew you up and who else was around. Everybody's around me. Everybody. I can't cease to exist because one person says you have to do it my way. No thanks. I'm taking responsibility to do it my way. And there's a lot of people that may be dependent on me. There may be. But there's nothing I can do about it. I meant what I meant. And if you don't want to take it seriously, if you don't want to bring it up, if you don't want to find something more with it, you made your answer known, you know. And once you do that, there's not much I can say. You know, you told me what you told me. There's only so much I could bring back to you now. You know, if you want to use something to manipulate with, you're going to lose. Because I'd never do that to you. I'd leave you alone. I'd leave you in silence. To me, silence is not a weapon. So like what I heard from the beginning here about, you know, if he doesn't understand your silence, he probably won't understand your words. It's not about that. Does there need to be an understanding at all? Because if there wasn't an understanding of the silence, there probably wasn't understanding at all. That's not their fault, you know. Who says they're not trying? You know, just because they don't understand doesn't mean they're not trying. I've tried a lot. And in fact, I probably was more understood when I was silent than I was with my words. Because once you see somebody in silence that's like me, you know, when you're talking to this pink cloud man, machine, whatever. I'm not a function, though. I'm not a function. I'm a human. Always will be. Always will be emotional. Always will have feelings. Yep, I'll be all of it. You know, I feel like crying, but I'm not going to. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because it's not coming out. And I think it's because I have spoken so much, and it's hard to cry once you speak everything. You know, I think damage is done. But there's something spinning still. Something spinning that's going to be spinning forever, maybe. I think I got it. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next, and I don't know if I'm prepared for anything. I'm taking responsibility all the time, so once you do, you can't really ask anybody anything else. You've done it, you know. You've done it, you've made it. You haven't just thrown it to the side and said, well, I need to ignore this now. I think that sometimes is the problem. That we use what we experience to sort of say that even if I didn't take responsibility, but that's the problem right there. You know, if you're going to use something like that to say they're the wrong ones, you know, you really are sinking that low to point out somebody's personality and saying that they should have known better. If I do point out things, it's mostly to vilify the kind of thing that I wanted. If I didn't want somebody in my life, I wouldn't talk about them. You know, I couldn't even speak about them in this way. There's nothing that is more, you know, sacrosanct with like what people truly think about things, like using cliches or the continuous, you know, cliche that demands actions beyond the cliche, meaning that's something that comes out after a cliche and makes you think, well, that's right. Yeah, all men are like that. You know, it's like, nah, all men aren't like that. Those cliches that you should have listened to were always there. They weren't just cliches. There's something deeper in them. You know, I don't know what kind of guy I am. I don't think I'm a guy that... No, I don't need to say don't think. I'm not a guy that will not try. I will. If it's not 100%, that's fine. But it's got to be 100% to try. You know? I'm not asking for you to change. But I'm asking for you to truly try. If you don't want to be there, don't be there. But if you're trying to use what I have or what you will to get what you want, then bye, you know. I don't have the nerves to stick around if you're not going to try. It may be a stab at myself there, but I'm willing to take responsibility. You know, don't worry about things. That's the one thing that I've seen that really makes people caged up to not do anything, is when they have fear, are afraid. I just can't walk away in that way anymore. I can't walk away in that form because I know exactly what I truly feel. How can I leave that? That's my passion. That's my willpower. I want to be there. So when I see that kind of barrier to just say, well, no, thank you, then it's like, I can't be here anymore. I couldn't even be there anymore because those kind of things are the reasons why most people aren't really, taking in anything. I can't learn anything from this. Well, you can't learn anything from that because it's gone already. You made it gone. That's the circumstances. That's the responsibility. Gone to hell. And circumstances are everything. No specific ones will stand out any more or deeper. I always thought about circumstances that way. It's something that really came up really recently, in fact. Within what people use to establish why they feel a certain way. If they feel like they're a bully, if they're dealing with things in a certain way to take out revenge, or to say I'm going to curse you, or something like that. Circumstances. No. Circumstances are a will of ourselves. We always try to defend what we do. And if we use circumstances, it's not really showing that we have responsibility for something. We don't want responsibility. But we try to use somebody else, a blame game, a shell game, in fact, to show that, well, this is the right place right here. But you put it in there in the first place. No one else said, hey, let's curse this person now. That's the one thing that I've learned about people that truly take out revenge and bullying. They try to make it sound like, well, that person made this happen. No, they didn't. They were the ones who did the problem. They were the ones who took something out on you. So yes, it was from them. But what you're doing now, it's not a part of them. They didn't go, well, now I want you to do it on me. Some people do that. And if you're just going to play into their game, you're only helping them continue. That's the one thing that I've learned about bullying and revenge and what people use. I mean, that's why I think, there could be conspiracies, because a lot of what our country has done has been for payback. But the payback was actually something pretty interesting, because we worked with those countries for a while. For a long time, in fact. So to see us pay back somebody for what happened to them and what happened to us before that when we were all friends, it shows that we basically wanted to take over. And we did anyway. Which means that was the whole point in the first place. So I could put it on the people that were there and say, well, it was their fault. They were idiots for letting themselves believe that this country wouldn't do it the same way again. Because they did before. And I think what makes me laugh at it is that, man, people are so much idiots. They don't think people do this to people. But they do the exact same thing. And I think that's what the circumstances are. Circumstances are everything. No specific ones will stand out any more or deeper. So when I hear something like, oh, that's just a coincidence. No, it's not. It's a circumstance that should be deeply researched. Is this truly able to happen? And if we try to just say, well, we'll defend it a certain way just because it goes with the official story, we're looking at the answer before looking at the question. We're looking at the possible theories of solution rather than looking at the evidence itself. Looking at the original evidence and finding an answer through that. A lot of people don't do that anymore. They look past things and say, well, let me think first about, what are the implications here if it could be something different. They always think about the groupthink. They always think about the mentality they have afterward. They think about the after effects. They think about what is there after. They don't think about actually looking into it deeply and finding the real answers. They look about, well, how's it going to be after if I try to look into it that way? How's it going to be after if it's this way or that way or this way? What could happen? But if you're only thinking that way, you can't find truth. You'll only find a lie. Because all you're looking for is something to get away from being hurt. Get away from being in a grim place or a dark place. But that's the only way you can find the light. Going through that dark place, To me, that's why a lot of this politics and stuff like that, governments and stuff, it's just something to allow ourselves to not worry about stuff. But at the same time, it only helps lies come out more. It only helps, in a way, a lot of badness, a lot of hidden manipulations, hidden agendas come out more and more because we accept it. And we'll say, well, it's not so bad. It's not so bad, but it's pretty bad. It's probably worse than that. You're right. It's not so bad. It's much worse than that. And I think that's what I've learned, especially about circumstances. There's no specific ones that will stand out any more or deeper. And I think in a lot of ways that's what makes it easy for people to kind of scapegoat anybody who does speak out. Like saying that, well, they should know better. Oh, well, why are they speaking up for this, It's almost like it's the one thing that we've always said we wanted to do, but we never do it. As an American, I stand in this country hearing so much protectionism, so much, security. But when we find out the real truths, everyone just says, no, it's not like that. People don't just give themselves up to be hounded down by everybody. People don't just whistle blow and speak up because, well, I want to be mistreated by the public now. I want to have a bad image with the media now. People don't just do that. I'm sorry, but people want to fit in. So if they're doing something, it's because they truly feel that something bad is happening. So when I hear people say like, oh, they just believe that stuff. Oh, yeah, that stuff isn't real. It's like saying that, Santa Claus isn't real, but we still have Christmas. It's like saying that Thanksgiving happened the way happened between the Indians as such, and continued as such prosperous, when there was almost a genocide of those people. See, it's the kind of thing where it's like, we'll just keep the dog tag here. We won't look at the war. We'll keep the dog tags, that's it. And I think that's what's happened between people. It's just about the material objects so much that we don't need to look at the real things anymore. The circumstances are nothing. The circumstances are nothing. But we're only going to keep these circumstances on the shelf because we need to make sure that these are important. And that's what you really get to when you get down to all this stuff, is the circumstances. But it's something a lot deeper than that. And I think in a lot of ways that's what I've learned about my society in general, the world in general, is that a lot of people just want to create their own demolition committee. Like, what we want is that. We don't want that here. We don't need that here. This we don't need. This we need. And I'm here to just settle the score and say, if you need to make a jurist that is so enabled to just be manipulated or to have a clear mind, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a mind that could judge better than another. So when people create judges, for example, or a jury panel, they say you can't know about this stuff or have an opinion on it already. But they're voting for an opinion. They're going to be saying guilty or not guilty. So you're telling them beforehand that they can't have a say in it beforehand. I think this is the one thing that I've learned. You could vote guilty or not guilty either way, whether you have an opinion on it or not. In fact, if you have an opinion on it, you'd be surprised how much you could find out by going through it. And what you really could end up changing your view or staying in the same. This is one thing that I've learned about our society in general, that if we want to learn something, we're not able to. Because we won't be put in those positions at all. They only put people who just want to work with the system, and that's it. Nobody against, nobody, making sense and trying to speak up and trying to have a profound voice. Nope, none of that. We'll just have people who know how to work the system, that's it. Work with it. And I think that's one thing I've learned about all this stuff, about circumstances are everything, And no specific ones will stand more deeper than another. They'll all stand out. They'll all stand out. That's why they happened in the first place. That's why they were put in the place in the first place. Circumstances are not something that are, willy-nilly. Here we are. We're at this circumstance now. And I think that's what I've really learned about circumstance and just everything about it. It's the same thing with what I learned about, not taking responsibility. I don't need to take responsibility by the end because it's not my responsibility anymore. What's been let in, what's been left in you or in me was never at all to begin with, And if it was never there to begin with, it means that I don't need to worry about it. It's not my responsibility. So let me stab myself here, but I won't stab myself literally. I'll just stab myself to let somebody else hurt me and to let them say whatever image they want to create of me, because it's not about me creating my image at that point. They already did that for me, I'll help you here. And if he doesn't understand your silence, he won't understand your words. Not really. If he doesn't understand your silence, then maybe you aren't saying the right words. Maybe you aren't saying the words enough. And sometimes it's the person that gets hurt the most that has to speak up. It's not the person that's there with them, that's trying to be there with them. I don't have to speak much. To understand somebody takes a lot less than to say everything. So that silence may be going the wrong way. Don't let another person speak up for your silence to evade. You can't wait for somebody else to understand you. And I think that's what I go to. Suppose you're in love. Well, if pain produces always logic, it doesn't just produce that. Nothing's very bad for you. The only thing that's very bad for you is to avoid or ignore. And I think that's what really is what comes down. Brings you down. But I don't have much else to say about this. It's a lot. So that's really it. Take care and love to all of you again. See you next time.